Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is May 12th. 2025. This is the A block. We got a little bit of a late start. John, can you hear me? John, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Brad.
Okay. We have a little bit of a technical problem here this morning, and being the kind of guy that never wants to assess blame, it's all John's fault. But
100%. We haven't talked about Skype and Teams at all, Brad.
Well, John, come on.
I'm not giving you a hard time. Hey, I love the fact that Skype was able to work. Like, you had Skype longer than I had. They cut mine off right away, Brad. They recognized you as a loyal user.
As a loyal user. The only time I use it for you, I use it for years, for Shelley, and now for you, John. That is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. We'll work on getting his good audio back. Although you don't sound too bad, John, over the phone. And you're just using your regular handset then, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. That's John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. He, every single day, even when Microsoft Teams throws him a curve, he gets online and puts together a list of the most important things in the state of Missouri, all the news items you need to know about. Now, what we do with this show is bring this guy right here. What's your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what he does is he counts them down, and we start off with...
In third place...
Right here in the Westplex, Francis Howell North was the subject of a curious piece over the weekend in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, a piece brought to us by education reporter Monica Obradovic. The headline, "What's that smell? Mysterious odor in Francis Howell North plagues students, staff." You say, John, this doesn't seem like a story that would appear on johncombest.com. What the heck? Well, you're right. It usually wouldn't. However, Brad, I link the stories that have a bit of a state element to them or a federal element. And we talked about the Francis Howell School District quite a bit on the local scene, but also on the state scene, because back in December, State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick's office gave the district the lowest possible rating of poor. Missouri State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick says the district is doing a poor job with its books. And specifically in that Fitzpatrick audit, the cost to build this brand new high school, Francis Howell North, was $164 million. And you would think, which was way over what had been budgeted. So, Brad, to get to the heart of the matter here, there has been a horrible odor permeating Francis Howell North for several months now. The building opened in August, and still, as of April, there was this rotten egg smell. And an element I pulled for you, Brad, because you will especially appreciate this. At least 3 teachers have received workers' compensation benefits for health issues, wink, related to the smell. That's what the superintendent said at a board meeting last month. So there has been a workaround recently, Brad, and it turns out that in early April, the district took 25 rooftop vents and extended them 5 feet higher, because it seems that there are sags or dips in the piping, especially those serving restrooms, and now, pardon me for this is kind of gross, it allows waste to sit and stew over the weekend and cause harsher odors as people return to school and flush the waste out. So, Brad, this stench has been a costly error, I guess you could say, or maybe design flaw at Francis Howell North. And it certainly doesn't give anyone who looked at Scott Fitzpatrick's audit, it doesn't give them any reason to believe that the district is off to a better start when it comes to Howell North.
Well, now, they didn't put a new building. They added on and rebuilt part of the old building. Is that what it is?
They rebuilt the old Howell North, correct.
Right.
Because the old Howell North was 40 years old.
Right. Sort of like what they did at some people will call Howell South, but it's actually the original Francis Howell High School. The original high school was relatively small, and they kept parts of it, but they put on a great big new addition to it. And essentially it's like the old school and the new school. Same kind of thing at North now then, right?
That's exactly what happened. So, and by the way, the exact figures is that the cost to build or to do this new addition was nearly double what district leaders said it would be. And back in December, Brad, when Scott Fitzpatrick issued this audit, you and I talked about it. As you can imagine, there's a whole lot of finger pointing. There's people that thought that some of the contracting was extra shady, and people, to steal a Brad Hildebrand phrase, were feathering their own nests with some shady contracts. So this is not good. But it appears as though the consensus is, if you read the Monica Abradovic piece, the consensus is the horrible smell is becoming a little less bad. Thankfully, kids are only in school for a couple more weeks now, and maybe over the summer they can rejigger some of this plumbing and piping.
Well, there were problems with the contract when some of the contracts were given to the guys in the city who were handling those contracts as well, too. So,
yeah, actually, because every pipe is stamped with Banjo Papula.
Right. Inspected by. Okay, number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
We've heard so much on the federal level about DOGE. We've seen folks protesting on street corners. We've seen Elon Musk celebrating DOGE victories. You'll recall, Brad, that the state of Missouri created its own DOGE committee. But we haven't heard a whole lot about stuff coming out of the DOGE committee. A gentleman in Columbia, the Columbia Missourian, Sterling Sewell. That's a good classic name, Sterling Sewell. He has a piece over the weekend. Legislative process slows Missouri's government efficiency efforts. And in short, Brad, the difference between the Missouri legislature's DOGE committee and Elon Musk and Donald Trump's DOGE is that Donald Trump and Elon Musk can pretty much do whatever they want using executive authority. In other words, they're able to use the power of the president's pulpit to get regulations scrapped. And as our friend, Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman explains in this Columbia Missourian piece, what's going on in the legislature is a little bit different. Because as suggestions come in to the committee would actually have to draft legislation about some of these government regulations, pass them through committee, take them to the full legislature, have the legislature pass them, have the governor sign them. So there are, by design, a lot more hurdles in the legislative process than there are through the executive process. But that doesn't mean things haven't moved forward. And a gentleman named Brad Hudson, he leads the part of the DOGE effort in the Missouri legislature. He points out that the DOGE committee in the legislature can get recommendations and then directly have conversations with leaders of the State Department. And in some cases, the leaders of those state departments can actually implement the changes just by power of their own authority. In other words, they don't have to wait on the legislature to pass a bill through committee. You'll like this, Brad. Senator Coleman says that some of the ideas that she has are looking at all these state constitutions, all of these standing committees that don't actually meet and don't actually do any real work. So, for example, here's the quote. They would create annual mechanisms to eliminate inactive boards, sell off unused state property, and move unused funds into general revenue. So this is kind of common sense stuff, Brad, and that seems like the kind of stuff that a DOGE committee should be targeting, so to speak, in its first year. So the long and the short of it, Brad, is that this isn't Washington, D.C., this isn't Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and the DOGE committee in Missouri can't just act unilaterally to change things in one fell swoop.
Interesting. Okay, number 1.
The number 1.
Well, Brad, we're coming to the end of the road. The Missouri legislature met its constitutional obligation and passed its state budget by May 9th. By law, they have to pass the budget by May 9th. They got that done last week. There were some dramatics in terms of what the Senate wanted versus what the House wanted, and a lot of proverbial horse trading, and maybe even some petty politics between members of the House and members of the Senate. But as we scramble to go into the final week here, the legislature dismisses on Friday, and it looks like one big piece will be debating and negotiating on the sick leave bill. You and I have talked about this extensively, Brad. Missourians passed Proposition A, back in November, which requires businesses of a certain size to give employees a certain amount of sick leave. Now, the catch in that, and what many businesses don't like, is that a worker doesn't actually have to be sick in order to use sick leave. They don't even have to claim an illness for themselves. They could claim an illness for some sort of family member. I'm guessing maybe a buddy or a pal. Who knows? So it looks like Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans are hammering out some sort of compromise to at least give the business community a little bit more of a victory. And let's not forget, Brad, there's still time for the legislature to debate controversial topics like abortion and a few other issues. I have some some final week previews up on my website today from a progressive blog, from St. Louis Public Radio, from the Post-Dispatch, and other outlets. Those are our top three today, Brad.
Okay, let's move along since we're way behind. It's all my fault.